Hey, what's up, team? So let's have a quick conversation about communication. This is going to be part two of the conversation I was having about communication and healthy communication, what it looks like. In the first section, we went over the three main components of communication, which is to listen, right? Two is understanding. And understanding is not just understanding. Understanding is demonstrating understanding. Okay. And then three is going to be conveyance. Okay. So we're not talking about conveyance today. We already talked about listening skills, good habits, bad habits, right? How you perform it. And now we're going to talk about demonstrating understanding. So demonstrating understanding is very important, okay? Demonstrating understanding is important because a lot of the worst habits that you get from people when you're trying to communicate with them come because they don't feel understood and they don't feel heard, okay? So people who repeat themselves, people who cut you off to re-clarify the same point or to try to correct something that you're saying. These things all come from you not demonstrating understanding. Now, there's some bad habits first I want to talk about, okay? The bad habits that people do when it's time for them to demonstrate understanding. All right, here are the bad habits people do. First off, they approach the other person with a bad faith assumption. Okay, and a bad faith assumption assumes that the person you're talking to is trying to make some ridiculous point that you know they actually would not make, right? So a woman who's like, "Oh, well, you know, I think you want to be abusive to me, or do you think that it's okay to just hit me, or do you think men should just be hitting women?" This is like a bad faith assumption. Like, obviously, that's not what the person is saying, right? Like, oh, so you think you're just supposed to have as many women as you want and cheat and da 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 da. So the bad faith assumption is the basis of these two other things that people do that are bad habits when they're demonstrating what they understand from what you said. Okay. The bad faith assumption is the basis of it, and it manifests two different ways. Okay. The first way is asking disingenuous questions, which I just gave an example of, right? So this is you making points you know the other person isn't making just to disrupt the flow of their ideas. And it's all based off of you giving a bad faith assumption to their behaviors. The other thing is intentionally misrepresenting their ideas, right? And this is intentional misrep is when you say something to them that you know is a summarization they would never agree to about what they're saying. Oh, so you think that we should just be throwing kids out of windows, or it's some completely disingenuous, point summarization that you're making about what the other person is saying, where immediately afterward it would be fair for you to say, man, I'm not saying that. Like, why are you wasting our time making that point? So when you are demonstrating understanding, here are the things that you actually want to do that are going to help move the conversation forward, right? We're going to call this things to know, right? These are the things you actually want to do when you're demonstrating understanding with somebody that you're trying to resolve an issue with. You enter a state of conflict in communication. You want to be able to talk your way through it, because the option is talk your way through it, walk away from it, or jump on a person physically, right? You don't want to beat them up. You don't want to walk away from the relationship. You need to be able to talk through it. So what are we going to do, right? The first thing is after you've listened to somebody using the listening techniques that I talked about in the first video, now you can ask for clarification. After you've listened, you can ask them to clarify things that didn't sound right or you don't think make sense. So what that would look like is you asking a question like, will you go deeper into this when you were talking about this? Can you re-explain that to me using different words? because I didn't feel like I understood it? Or will you go into more depth and give me more details about what you mean? You know, or you can ask somebody like, when you were talking about this, what did you really want me to take away from it? If you could put it into one sentence, right? This way you can get them to clarify, consolidate, elucidate ideas so that you can better understand them, right? And this is an important part of, after you listen, demonstrating that you understand them and that you're looking for understanding. The other thing you want to do is you want to review their points, right? So reviewing their points, you don't want to disingenuously recount points and positions you know that they're not making. You want to make sure that you're saying their ideas back to them in a way that they would find acceptable. And that means you have to take a good faith assumption about them and their ideas, right? You have to assume that what it is that they're saying is for a good reason and deal with them accordingly, okay? So you need to try to say back to them what they said to you in a way they would agree with. And that's when you review their points, okay? The next thing that you would want to do is ask if you missed anything, right? Because maybe you got a couple of their main points, but there are other things that they want to add on now that they've listened to you say what they said back to them. They want to say, you know what, now that I think about it and you said, hey, I said A, B, and C, I do want to add D and E to the conversation. These are things I want you to take away. And then you don't move on to saying your piece until you ask them, do I understand you? Right? You want to gain agreement from the person that you understand them completely. Okay? You want to say, hey, do I understand you completely? This is an important step, because this means that when you go to talk and share your feelings, right, they're going to need to stop and listen to you. They're going to need to stop and listen to you because you've already proven to them that you were willing to listen. You listened to their story like we talked about in the listening portion of the first video, that you listened to them without interrupting. You didn't yell. You paid attention. You were mindful of your body language. You didn't interrupt them even though they made you the bad guy in the story, even though they made up feelings for you that weren't really your feelings or positions or intentions. You didn't interrupt them when they did that. Even though they changed the chronological order of whatever situation or event brought you guys to a state of conflict, you still didn't interrupt them. Those are things we all covered in the listening video. You guys should go back and check in on it. I talked about it in detail, right? And now it's time to demonstrate understanding. And when you do that, like I said, you want to avoid these bad habits, right? The bad faith assumption is the basis of bad listening or in bad demonstration of understanding. And one is asking disingenuous questions and intentionally misrepresenting their ideas to something that is negative, right? That you know they aren't actually saying, right? And then you have things that you need to know about how to do it correctly. And that is asking for clarification, right? Make sure you review their points. Ask, did you miss anything? And then make sure that when you finish, you ask them, do I understand you completely? That's how you're going to do it. This is how you demonstrate understanding. This is going to make your relationships better with every single person in your life, not just your interpersonal romantic relationships, your brother, your mother, your sister, your auntie, your uncle, your cousin, right? This is mentorship. Okay, fellas, good leadership is about being firm in how you execute on things. It's about how you communicate. It's about how you show, showing leadership is about understanding the people that are reporting to you or people that you're responsible for, people that you have authority over. If you can't have good, meaningful dialogue with them and they don't feel understood, they are not going to want to follow you, especially a woman. Okay, women do not want to follow men who don't listen to them and don't care about their feelings. Okay, they want to submit and follow men that are able to show strength, but then at the same time are soft with them to a degree. And that comes through in how you communicate. All right, until next time, let's go ahead and keep it moving. We're going to keep learning together. You guys have a great one.